Welcome back to the Pro Football Hall of Fame for our last installment of our Before the Snap series this calendar year as we go into the holiday season. If you've never watched this program before and this is your first time tuning in, well, what are you going to see? What are you going to expect? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about what it takes to have a career in and around the NFL, the ins, the outs, the tips, the tricks, all of those things on what it takes to have a career in the NFL. And we're super excited to hear from our special guest today about her career and where she is at now down in Nashville, as you can assume, with the Tennessee Titans. If you've tuned in before, obviously you know what you're going to hear about today, and we thank you so much for tuning in and watching this program again. My name is Jake Ray. I'm the Youth Education and Leadership Manager here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, where it's our mission to honor the greatest of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence together. And those values we promote are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and honesty, all of which made our 371 Hall of Famers the best football players, minds, businessmen that they could be, but also can make you a great student. And it makes us great employees at the Pro Football Hall of Fame and makes our guest today a great employee with the Tennessee Titans. And you'll hear these values pop up today. I am sure of it. Before we do get started, I have some thank yous I'd like to pass out. First, I'd like to thank any educator, professor, administrator that's either watching us live in our classroom right now or sent this out to their students to watch and participate in today. We thank you so much for allowing us to be a small part of your students' learning experience. Secondly, students, we want to thank you. As always, this program is here for you to start your networking journey and ask questions that you might have about what it takes to get started on a career in and around, the game of football. You have the opportunity today to ask those questions. Let us know what questions that you have. First off, as always, you got to let us know where you're watching from. So if you're in the chat right now, go ahead and put your name and the school you go to. And if you already have a question, go ahead and type that out. Nathan's in the other room watching that feed. So let us know where you're watching from and if you have a question. If you don't have a question right now, it's okay. Take a little bit of time, think of one, and then go ahead and throw that in the chat. But as always, let us know where you're watching from. We want to see how many different and unique colleges we can have tuned into this program today. And while you're at it, go ahead and like the video, throw a comment into the comment section, and go ahead and subscribe to the Hall of Fame's YouTube channel as well, so you can be updated anytime we go live for Before the Snap program. So lastly, I'd like to thank our special guest today, who are we lucky and grateful to be joined by Guerra, who joined the Titans in August of 2019 as a team publicist, transitioning to Vice President of Marketing and Communications in September of 2021. In her role, she oversees off-the-field media and public relations, social responsibility and volunteerism, fan engagement, cheer, mascot, drumline entertainment, and the Titans website and mobile app. So we have a lot of different ranges, a lot of different things we'll be able to talk about today. She's a native of McAllen, Texas, and graduated from the University of Texas, so I'm sure she is super happy to be a member of the Final Four in the college football playoff. She graduated in 2010 with a Bachelor of Arts in English, moved to Indianapolis and received her Master's of Arts in Sports Journalism from Indiana University at IUPUI. She spent 8 years working for IndyCar, the North America's premier open-wheel racing series, leading the series race market and national media outreach. Kate, you've done a lot, and we're super happy that you are here, and welcome to Before the Snap.
Thank you so much. You were joking about the college football playoff, but no joke. We had a junior cheer program at our last home game that did a pregame performance before the game. And so as I'm walking down our field stairs to take all these adorable little children down to the field, they put the selection show was happening, and they put the top four up on the big screen. And I kid you not, I'm a pretty like cool customer. Not a lot kind of excites me on the job. I keep it here, working in PR and marketing, you got to kind of keep it there. The most inhuman sound escaped my lips. I just shrieked. There were some tears. We're really excited in the Longhorn community.
Awesome. Well, I know you're excited for that. As a Buckeyes fan, still a little bummed about what happened to us the weekend after Thanksgiving. It hurts a little bit still, but got a bowl game, got a New Year's Six that we're looking forward to as well. So to get back to why we're here today, we can talk about college football all we want. But to get back why we're here today, before the snap, jobs in sports. So the first question we always like to ask is kind of that 10,000-foot view, day-to-day life. What does your job as the Vice President of Marketing and Communications look like, and some of the things you handle on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I hate to start our conversation with a cliche, but I'm going to do it. Every day is a little bit different. There's no one day that's exactly the same. But day to day, I'm essentially just overseeing how we speak to our fans, the experiences that we offer them, whether it's something that they come to experience at a game, whether it's something that they're reading in the news, whether it's something that they're joining us for in downtown Nashville or a suburb of Nashville because we're throwing a party or we're doing a music event. We just want to make sure that being a Titans fan, being a part of being a Titans fan is something that speaks to who our audience is, and that we're offering them a ton of different experiences to make it really feel like a community, and that it's more than just seeing us on Sundays. It's kind of a year-round thing where we're all talking to each other and we all feel like we're a part of something, we're building something together.
A couple follow-ups off that. Obviously, we read through your job description and the things you handle on the day-to-day basis, and it's overseeing so much. How do you balance all of that? Obviously, you're not just a VP of marketing where you have that subset of marketing. There's
Sure.
6 or 7 things under your title. How do you find the time to balance all that? Is it relying on others within the organization? Is it good time management? What are some tips and tricks you take to balance that workload?
No, it's a really good question, and I think to back up for a second, I think when you think of the word marketing, what I've come to realize, especially with someone that as somebody that has a background more so in the media relations and PR field, when the organization approached me about taking on more marketing responsibilities, there was a moment when I felt pretty nervous about that. When I said, okay, well, this isn't necessarily my background. I need to understand more of what the organization is hoping that I can bring to this role. And what I learned through that sort of mental and internal process was that marketing is different in no matter what team you're on, no matter what organization you're with, it means something different to every organization. So the way that we see marketing is essentially, how are we servicing our fans? And so that's why you see that broad range of roles kind of under this title, right? We're trying to build real personal human connections between, the organization, which, sits on I'm looking out onto the practice field right now. We're in North Nashville in the Metro Center suburb. And then we're downtown at the stadium, and if you weren't out here, you might not see us very much. And so how do we change that? How do we make sure that we're building these personal and very intimate relationships between the fan base and the organization, so to speak? And then how are we serving our community as well? How are we making sure, Nashville, we're in the volunteer state. We're a community that's very focused on serving each other and lending a hand when somebody needs a boost up. And so how are we as the Titans fitting into that community and making sure that that's what our fans see us as being about as well? So that's why you see, volunteerism. That's why you see, not kind of non-football media relations, our email, our website, our app, all of these things kind of working together within the marketing function, but obviously it's so much more than that. So to answer your question specifically, I have an awesome team of people who really support me day to day. We actually just all went out to a Nashville Predators game last night to celebrate our holiday party. And we just really feel like we are part of something together. We're building something together. We all have a lot of responsibility on our shoulders, and they support me, I support them. And we make sure that we're supporting, our teammates on different departments as well. So it truly is, kind of the team within the team within the team, trying to make sure that what the players are doing out on the field, we're doing our best within the organization as well to make sure that our mission statement is to win, serve, and entertain. And so that's what certainly the football team's doing out on the field, and it's what we're trying to do within the organization as well.
I love that. I love that idea. I now reference the photo you have behind you there. It says "Win, Serve, and Entertain." It does.
That's it.
Does definitely make sense. I want to ask another question. You talked about some of the things you do in the community. And you referenced music, obviously being the home of country music and, Broadway and everything that goes on there. How do you take an atmosphere like that and something that is so popular within the city that you work in, not so much take advantage of it or hop on the back of it, but use it to your advantage and come up with these different events to bring not only the Titans organization, but this love for music that the city has. And there's all these people coming to Nashville for that. How do you combine those two things creatively to come up with these different events and things that you can host in conjunction with all the great things Nashville has to offer?
Yeah, no, it's huge. And I think you put it very well. Nashville is Music City. And so it's not as much about, how do we take advantage of that or how do we utilize that? That's who we are. Like that is our DNA, that's our makeup. And there's sort of two schools of thought there. There is to your point, the Broadway, the country music, the honky tonks, that a lot of people who don't live here kind of see as Nashville. Then you have the local perspective of people who've lived here over the past couple of decades, who've really seen Nashville change and grow from what was a very small town into a big city that still kind of feels like a small town at times, right? And so for them, Music City is about so much more than what happens on Broadway, right? It's about honestly so much more than country music too. So many different genres kind of get their start here. And so what we tried to do, what certainly was very helpful for me, one of our directors on the marketing team, we actually hired from the music industry to help us truly understand, okay, we want to make sure that as we're addressing music within the Titans, whether it be the music that we play at a game or the way that we're supporting the music community kind of on a day-to-day basis, are we doing it in the most legitimate and authentic way? Because I think if you asked the music community if what happens on Broadway represents their community, they'd probably tell you no. And so we wanted to make sure that we had somebody that could help us really dig into that and make sure that, okay, at your games, make sure you're not just playing country music. We all love country music. Country music is certainly a huge part of the Nashville experience. But, did you know that Paramore grew up in Franklin? That's where they got their start. Did you know that, we have all these other genres represented here? And so we just really try to make sure that we're truly understanding the needs of the music community, and also understanding what our fans want to hear when they're at a Titans event as well. So trying to make sure we're finding that authentic experience and then bringing it to the events that we're bringing to our fans.
I think that's a great explanation, not only of how you use that in your job, but I love that you brought up that you hired somebody that worked in the music industry. We stress all the time when we're talking to students and college students about jobs in the NFL is that, it's so easy to find a thing you're passionate for example, music, and be able to curtail that into a job in sports. And that's a great example of that. You might like football, you might love football, but if you love music, you just gave a great example there of how you can combine both those passions into a career. And I think that's a great example, whether it was intentional or not, to showcase this to our students watching today that there are opportunities out there. You might not be the biggest football fan, you might be a casual fan, but if you are, you can combine it with your other passions to find a career that fits you best.
Absolutely. I know that we're going to talk a little bit later about favorite parts of the job, but one of my favorite parts of the job is that we have a team of people here, and it's really nice that we have a lot of people who've come from other NFL teams, or who've come from the league office, and their institutional knowledge of how an NFL team, how a league operates is invaluable to our team. Then we have this awesome mix of people who had zero NFL experience before they came here, but they are masters in their craft at finance or at music. Or, I mean, me, for example, I loved sports, but I came from a racing background, and being able to bring these sort of fresh perspectives. So not everything that we're doing is coming from the same perspective. We have a lot of people who are from Nashville. We have a lot of people who are not from Nashville. And to make this kind of melting pot of backgrounds and experiences has led to us becoming a stronger marketing team, a stronger organization, because we have people here who represent our fans more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to start off. We got a bunch of student questions rolling in, so I'm gonna throw it over to Nathan Martin. He's got some of those written down, and give a little background. Nathan, big IndyCar fan, so I mean, he might have some IndyCar questions for you. So Nathan, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Amazing.
Yes, there is some IndyCar history with my family.
Love it.
My grandpa, would go to the track. He lived close to it, and his
Yeah.
dad and everything. So I've been to the Indy 500. That's my fandom. I watch it every year. My brother's a season ticket holder with that, so there's some
Amazing.
IndyCar in my family. But
That's great.
we don't need to talk about my IndyCar. We don't need to talk about the college football playoff like you guys were going to. But I got to piggyback off that because we've got a student, Daniel, from the University of Washington. All right, college football.
Oh, Daniel, I thought you were going to say Texas, and I put
No, Washington. So they're in the Final Four there too. So they
all
got
right.
the hopes still up. Daniel wants to know just what would be your I guess top piece of advice for a student looking to get into the sports industry, just general, not a specific field, but just sports industry. What advice are you giving college students on kind of how to break in, I guess?
No, that's a great question. I mean, the sports world is extremely competitive. And I mean, there's a lot of industries that are competitive. But what I would recommend is to really find what you're passionate about. It kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, right? Find what you're really passionate about, find what you're really good at, hone that craft, and I guarantee you there's a role for you in sports. I was chatting, we're trying to get girls flag football very prevalent in our market here in Tennessee. And we're working with TSSAA, the high school sanctioning body here, to sanction it as an official high school sport. And I was speaking with some of the students who are participating in that league here in Metro Nashville. And this young woman came up to me after the panel and she said, I really want to work in sports. That's my passion. But I also really want to be a lawyer. And that's what I feel like I'm going to be really good at. So I know I can't work in sports because my path is law. And I was like, wait, hold on a second. I was like, whether they like it or not, I talk to our lawyers about things literally every day. I think that the most emails they get is from me, like there is a path for law within sports, and she had no idea. Similarly, our CFO, Shannon Myers, was working for an audit company before she became our chief financial officer. So she's a really good financial officer. I'm sure this young lady that I spoke to is going to be an incredible lawyer, and she's working on honing that craft. So if you can find your lane, sports is just such a diverse and growing industry. There's so many opportunities for different roles. So just really keep chipping away at that craft honing at this point of your career, and then you'll find a path in sports.
I love that. And I think it reminds me of something we try to tell students when we get the opportunity to speak to them. Don't be afraid, especially as a college student, to try a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on a college campus, you might not get paid, but they're not going to turn away your offer at help, with the athletic events that they're trying to put on, especially at a university as big as the University of Washington there with Daniel.
Sure.
Like you might think like marketing's your thing, and then you go, ooh, I did some work with the marketing. That's not my thing. And then you might think special events, whatever it is, like try a lot of different things, because sometimes the best thing that can come out of it is you realize I don't want that for my career.
Right. No, I mean, my career path is the perfect example of that, right? So I, like Daniel, I was at a big school, right? I was at a huge school, and I was an English major. I was getting towards the end of my college career, and I was like, okay, I got to figure out what I want to do. But college is about to be over, and I knew that I loved to write. I didn't really want to go into teaching. And then I had this sort of like side hobby of just being like really into sports, right? And one day, my dad texted me, and he was like, "Hey, did you hear that the school newspaper is doing auditions for their sports department, their sports writing staff?" And I was like, yeah, I heard about it, but I'm not going to apply because I wasn't on my high school newspaper. I'm at one of the largest universities in the country. I'm sure their student newspaper, the Daily Texan, is like award winning. They're not going to hire me off the street, you know. He was like, well, why don't you just try? And I was like, all right, well, I'm not one to turn down a challenge. And so I auditioned, and they hired me as their softball beat writer. And I was done. I was like, this is it. I'm going to be a sports writer. Like that's my path. And so I ended up going off to grad school because I was so late in my college career, wanted to take some time to learn more about that craft. You know, what does it take to be a sports writer? Started getting interested in broadcast, and I decided, great, that's the path for me. I'm going to be on ESPN. That's what I'm doing. And started applying for jobs towards the end of grad school, and just wasn't getting a lot of interest. And finally, my academic advisor said, well, hey, you know, the IndyCar racing series here down the street in Indianapolis, they're hiring a public relations intern. Why haven't you applied for that yet? And I was like, well, because I'm going to be on ESPN. You know, like I'm not applying for a PR internship. I'm going to be in front of the camera. And she was like, look, just go try it. You're going to meet a lot of reporters, and maybe after your internship, they can help you with some tips of how to break into sports media. I was like, yeah, that's really smart. And then I got into PR and realized how cool it was. And I realized, wait, this is my passion, you know, like, and it took so many different avenues, you know, it's for me to realize that passion. And then it didn't stop after that, right? I did PR for 8.5 years with IndyCar, did it for 2 more years here with the Titans. And then marketing came along, and then cheerleading came along. These are all things that, you know, in no way did I ever really see for myself. But if I hadn't accepted that opportunity, if I hadn't tried things out, I probably wouldn't be in the place that I am today. So it's what you just said, Nathan, is so true, and something that I definitely, and anytime I'm speaking to a student, make sure to emphasize, you know, don't be afraid to try things, even if you don't think you'll like them. See, go find out. And then if you don't, great, move on to the next thing. But don't be afraid to broaden your horizons.
Well, not ESPN, but you are on Before the Snap. So I mean, it's
Guys,
kind of
I'm on the Pro Football Hall of Fame's YouTube page right now. Like I had a moment as you were going live, Jacob. I was like, this is cool.
yeah. Next question we got. This is from Jonathan, a student at the University of Tampa. Jonathan seems to have kind of already, I guess, honed his focus on what he wants to do, and that's marketing specifically.
Nice.
So when Jonathan's thinking about marketing, and maybe applying for internships across the league, or he said, you know, not just with the franchises, but maybe at the league level, you know, at
Mhm.
the NFL, you know, is there a difference for what he should be looking to do or how he should
Sure.
sell himself?
Right.
What kind of advice would you have for a student like Jonathan?
Jonathan, I mean, what I would say is literally everything is marketing. Everything is marketing. There's hardly anything that's fan facing that I wouldn't consider marketing. But yeah, there's a lot of different types of marketing. So typically what my team delves in is more experiential marketing and initiative marketing. So, you know, our kids club, the Rack Pack here at the Titans, our junior cheer programs, when we're doing like great lifestyle clothing pop-up shops, you know, to kind of diversify the clothing out there. Our events that we do with fans, you know, very kind of experiential and initiative driven. Then you have performance marketing, which is a lot of, you know, analytics and email marketing, and the way that, you know, even some of the website and app performance. And so I guess I would just say, if you can, you know, get a little bit of experience. Advertising is another great example of performance marketing. So it just get a little bit of experience in everything if you can. But also between those things, you know, maybe decide what you're more passionate about. Certainly at the league, they have an entire events team that works on, you know, the draft and the combine and all of the Super Bowl, all of their big events, which, you know, in my eyes is a lot of marketing, but is technically separate from their more traditional marketing side. So there's definitely differences no matter what team, organization, league, sport you go into. Everyone's marketing team is going to be a little different. I haven't even mentioned social media. Social media actually lives on our creative team here at the Titans. So lots of different types of marketing. Just find what you're passionate about, try different things. And I bet you'll find something within that broad range of marketing that you'll really enjoy.
I appreciated that answer. I hope Jonathan appreciated that answer. We're going to keep rolling with the student questions. Next one comes from Sebastian, student at Sacred Heart University. Sebastian wants to know, how would you advise Kate, a college student, in particular, to network? They hear that buzzword in college, I'm sure, all the time. You got to network. You got to network. Build your network. Like, okay, how would you tell them to do it though? How do they actually do it?
So what I would say is typically if you're living in a city that has some sports teams already, a lot of times they're doing their own networking events, so they're doing job fairs, they're doing, meet the president, meet the team. And so as many opportunities you have to go to things like that, whether it be virtual or in person, just go out there, get your name out there, have a business card to hand to somebody, have a resume on hand. I'll even have people come up to me at like watch parties and say, hey, I figured somebody from the Titans marketing team was going to be here. I'm Joe, I'm Sarah, and I'm really interested in getting involved in your internship programs. What do you have available? And I'll connect them with the right people to do that. So certainly that's easy if you have access to a sports team. If not, like I'm totally open to receiving emails from people. What's hard for me when I receive an email from somebody that just says, I don't know, I just love sports, and so I'm hoping that you can help me find a job. It's like, okay, well, but what are you good at? What are your passions? Or so I get a lot of the like, well, I just want to be in sports and I just want to get my foot in the door, so I'll do whatever. It's like, well, that's great. I certainly could use extra hands for different things, but tell me a little bit about your background. Tell me a little bit about what you're passionate about, what your talents are, and then I can better guide you. So, totally open to the cold email. And I know a lot of my colleagues are as well. But the more opportunities you have, even within your own communities, I'm sure your community has a chamber of commerce or they have a young professionals organization where you can go and network with like-minded people. Even that, you're talking to people who might be your peers and they might have leads on great networking opportunities with the business community in your area. So just put yourself out there. It's awkward and you'll get more comfortable doing it the more you do it. But you just got to start somewhere.
I appreciate the fact that you kind of spelled out the example of getting that cold email where it's like, I love sports. Can I get a job? And kind of why that doesn't work and why that's not really fruitful when the students send that. Because when I think of networking, like there has to be benefit for both sides, and yeah, maybe initially as a student, you're sitting there and you're like, well, what can I offer? The vice president of, whatever the title is, the job that you're pursuing. Well, you probably can't offer very much maybe initially, but you can at least offer like a relationship and say like, hey, this is why I think I might be good for this field, and explain, your strengths and how you think the position could help you. Because like you said, and you mentioned all your colleagues, the vast majority of people that are working in sports were in your shoes and they want to help you get to where they're at, so I think just trying to be genuine about the way you reach out when you're networking is real critical for sure.
It's so critical, and I'll even add to that how critical it is. When I was ready to start looking for a new position, I reached out to my network of people that I had sort of built as whether they be career mentors or just people that I had met in different industries, and wrote them and said, hey, I have a great job. I've been here 8.5 years. I might be looking for a new challenge. And that group of people activated so hard. It was the most humbling experience of my life to know that there were people out there that I had built relationships with who were just willing to drop what they were doing and send out a few emails for me of like, well, hey, I know this person's looking for a job. I know them. I'm going to reach out to them for you, see if they'll give you an interview. Like, so that's how the networking really in the end, pays off. And then obviously you have to be willing to do that for people who've networked with you. You have to kind of pay it forward as well. That's how the circle works.
Yeah, that's beautiful to hear that personal anecdote. I'm going to send it back to Jake. The students have done a great job submitting questions, so I'm going to kind of dive back in and look at what we got. But Jake, it's all yours now.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. Love all those answers. Love all those questions. Keep submitting them questions, students. And, if we don't get to your question today, and we might not get to all of them, gives you a great opportunity to reach out via LinkedIn. Kate's LinkedIn link is posted there in the chat, so make sure you reach out and connect with her as well. Kate, part of what we talked about at the beginning is what we're about here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, honoring the greatest of the game and preserving its history, part of our mission statement, and we at our core, we're a museum. So anytime we do a program, we try our best to incorporate that museum. So we thought, what better way to do that than actually go live out into our museum. We've got Jerry Shockey, the director of youth education and leadership, out in our museum in front of a display. And it's going to talk a little bit how it relates to your career as well as the Titans and the Oilers organization. So Jerry, whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Jake. And Kate, I appreciate you connecting in here today. And for all the students that are connected in on YouTube Live, what an awesome opportunity as a network. And get your name out there, get some more information about the career you want to choose, and just an awesome opportunity for you to ask questions. So a reminder to students, make sure you submit your questions on in the chat, state your name, the school that you're representing, and then also your question. And so I'm actually here in our space. It's called the first century of pro football. And in this part, we actually go decade by decade to the first century. And I'm actually in front of the 1990s. And the 1990s were pretty interesting when it comes to teams relocating and new teams being added. You have the Carolina Panthers, Jacksonville Jaguars. You have the Browns leaving to Baltimore. Then you have a new franchise being granted to the Browns in Cleveland. But then you also had teams relocating, the Rams and the Raiders. But another one of those teams was the Oilers. And so for the students that are tuning in here, maybe you've probably seen the cool logos. And I got to admit, the Oilers old school stuff looks pretty cool. Their merch and stuff like that is awesome. And so the Oilers were originally in Houston as the Houston Oilers, eventually moved to Nashville, kept that name, the Oilers, for a short time, then eventually changed to the Tennessee Titans. So, Kate, I'm curious, when it comes to, from a marketing and communications perspective for the students, how do you pay respect to the history of the Houston Oilers and those as you promote the Titans? Because I was thinking about, just as I was sitting here, as we were about to go here, you're in a little different situation than maybe the Raiders or Rams are, because the Raiders and Rams, they kept their same team name and they kept their logo, where you guys have a different team name and a completely different logo. So how do you balance those things?
Yeah, it is a balance, right? Like, I think that word really describes it very well. It was a huge focus when our controlling owner, Amy Adams Strunk, took over the team several years back. It really kind of started with this desire to make sure that the players that she had grown up watching, that she watched her father, bring into the AFL and then eventually into the NFL, had a home. They when we changed to the Titans, there was a lot of confusion around, like, okay, well, I'm an Oiler. Where do I fit into the Titans community? Where's my home? Where's my family? And so she very clearly wanted to make sure that people understood that the Titans are the Oilers. We are all one family. We're all one community. And she has done a fabulous job making sure that all of our former Oilers players really feel like they are Titans as well. And so we had a fantastic alumni weekend a few weeks back in October, I believe, where for the first time since we became the Titans, we were able to wear these amazing throwback jerseys. We invited in over 160 former players, both Oilers and Titans, into the stadium, and they got to see those uniforms on the field again. The end zones were painted Oilers. Our fans were wearing Oilers jerseys. Jerry, you mentioned that the merch looked awesome. It does look awesome. It's fantastic, and the fans really responded very well to that. So we don't really see it as, certainly this sounds a little cliche, but we don't really see it as two different entities. Obviously, there's two different logos, there's two different uniforms, but in terms of how we're viewing our brand, how we're viewing our history, we're one and the same.
Well, thank you, Kate. Beautiful explanation, and appreciate you taking time here today to connect with our students. Again, students, reminder, submit those questions, and Nathan will get those interjected throughout the program. So thank you, everyone, and Jake, I'll send it back to you.
All right, thanks, Jay. Thanks for giving us a live look into the museum. I think that's awesome. Obviously, big fan of the Powder Blues. They looked great out there on the field the couple times you guys have worn the uniforms this season. Love the logo through the helmet back here to represent both the Titans and the Oilers organization as well. Kate, looking at your career specifically, the jump from IndyCar to football, racing the football, I mean, two totally different worlds, especially IndyCar that's more of a national outreach, and then the Tennessee Titans there.
Right.
And so what are some of the biggest differences you saw between your time in IndyCar and your time there with the Titans?
Yeah, it's so funny. They're sort of what I thought it was going to be, and then what it is once I got here and kind of learned the landscape. So when I was at IndyCar, such an incredible sport. It was a sport that I did not grow up with. And that I had to learn a lot about. I remember crash coursing until 2 a.m. the day before my interview to make sure that I knew the names of some of the drivers and some of the key terms, so I didn't just bomb my interview when I went in there. And so it was really just a deep dive into learning the sport. And what I truly felt once I spent a lot of time in the sport was that its biggest opportunity to grow was not necessarily to talk about aerodynamics and downforce levels and tire degradation, but to really tell the story of the athletes, to tell the stories behind the cars and all the people working behind the cars to make sure it feels like a very individual sport, but it's actually quite the team operation. So I loved going out there and telling those sort of unknown stories to really kind of take it from a sport where people think about a car and sort of a faceless driver with a helmet on, and really personalize it. So it was, as you guys know, a sport that was very popular, kind of in the 70s, 80s, and then the way that the sports landscape and industry has changed over the past several decades has decreased that popularity a little bit. So I loved being the underdog. And I loved reaching out to media outlets, trying to pitch that really great story. And anytime you were able to get a story in one of those big national outlets, was the hugest deal. It was just a really, really big deal. And now the team that's handling marketing and PR for the sport now has grown its popularity in such a large way. When I got to the Titans, I remember listening to the football communications team talk about okay, these are the interview requests that we have for players this week. And it was every single outlet that I had to just scrap and claw to get at my time at IndyCar. Certainly, again, a different landscape for them now. But I remember thinking, gosh, what's my challenge going to be if I'm in the NFL now and these interview opportunities are not as I don't have to fight as hard to get them. What am I going to do? And I really kind of found that a different challenge in, especially here locally, we were just kind of at a place back in 2019 where most people who thought of the team just thought of what happens on Sundays, and once I kind of visited the offices around the organization, I learned about what everybody else was doing off the field, about what we were doing in the community, about what we were doing from a business perspective. And I'm like, I think people would really like to know this stuff. I think people would like to hear about it and learn how they can get involved. And I think they'd like to know more about who we are as a team than just what's happening out on the field. And so we just started working with reporters here, and even in the things that we were putting out as an organization to really kind of diversify that content. Not every story was about, how many touchdowns we scored that game, but it was about how Amy just gave $1 million to help people who'd been impacted by a tornado, just little things like that to help people understand who we were. So I ended up doing a lot of similar things, but just on different levels. I think I thought that initially it was going to be very different. But think the principles are the same, and you're trying to create these human connections. You're trying to grow a fan base, but you're also trying to connect with a fan base. It's not just about how many fans you have. It's about, how much do they like you, and how much do they want to be a part of what you're a part of. So it was definitely a transition, but ultimately I think we're trying to accomplish similar things.
Yeah, I think definitely agree that, at the end of the day, the goal is still the same. It's
Yeah.
that you put out the great stories. And no matter if you're working for a high school paper or you're working for the NFL, I think that's the goal there at the end of the day. So I know Nathan said we got a bunch more student questions, so we want to get in as many as, I got a lot more questions, but we want to get in as many of those student questions as possible. So I'm going to throw it back to Nathan here for a few more of our students' questions.
Yep. Thank you, Jake. First question from a student. This is Lowen from Xavier University here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Wants to know, Kate, like if students don't know which sport they want to get into, you started with IndyCar, now you're in the NFL. Is there any advice on how to proceed? How should they go about that? What do you think with that?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, IndyCar was not a sport that I knew literally anything about when I first started working there. But I love pretty much all sports. If you put a good product in front of me, no matter what sport it is, I'm probably going to get really into it. I've never played golf a day in my life. I love watching golf on TV. I love going to golf tournaments. I've never played tennis a day in my life. It's one of my favorite sports to watch or attend. So I think if you have that passion, for what your craft is, the sport that you work in doesn't necessarily matter. And in fact, I've heard many people say to me, sometimes it's helpful to not work for the team or the sport that you're a fan of. And I've seen both sides of that. Our director of fan engagement, Jenny Deloach, who I mentioned, we hired in from music. She was a diehard Titans fan before she came into the organization. And there was and I've told her this, so I don't mind sharing it with you guys. There was a moment of hesitation on my part in terms of, I mean, I don't know, like, is she going to be able to separate the fan from the work, and obviously she's done a great job. And in fact, having her perspective of her community, who are those diehard fans who've been here since day one, has proved to be incredibly helpful in many cases when we're trying to make business decisions. So anyway, I think there's both sides of the coin there, and getting involved in a sport where you don't know a lot about it, you're a little bit of an outsider. I think you can bring fresh perspective into something. But if you, even sports that you're very knowledgeable about, your institutional knowledge of that sport also can prove helpful. So I would say go where the opportunity is. And then eventually, if you decide you want to, I'm a diehard baseball fan, I just really want to work in baseball, you can work towards that.
I think there are a couple of really good nuggets there, just related to the idea that it almost could be a benefit, at least initially, maybe, to get into a sport that you don't know as well, because the actual skills and abilities that you have with marketing or event planning or social media can really shine through. And then you're not distracted by like, hey, I love football. And you know what I mean? Like, and then the point too about being a diehard fan, I think you did a great job of explaining that, because we've had others on before the snap mention that. Like, it's really important for the students to understand when you go into interview, you might be the biggest Titans fan. And that's not to say don't mention that you're a fan, but don't make that be why you're applying or the focus.
Right.
You really highlight the skills that you have and how you can benefit the organization. So next question from our students here is from Wesley from North Carolina A&T. Wants to know, as the vice president of marketing and communications for the Titans, Kate, what are some jobs or skills that you didn't have prior to having this position that you think you have now, or at least maybe a weakness that you've improved upon since you've had this role?
I think Jacob mentioned this earlier. Time management is something that I have had to, and it's still something that I'm constantly working on. With the number of things that we're working on a day-to-day basis across the organization, finding how you're going to prioritize your day is something that is really crucial to feeling like you're making progress. Because if you're just kind of working on what's in front of you, sometimes I have to put my email away just for a few minutes, because when I hear that ding, immediately my focus goes there, but I need to keep focusing on the project that I'm working on at that moment. We actually just had all of our interns for this season present presentations in our event space upstairs at our headquarters. And one of them was saying that they just had no idea how many things that she was going to have to work on a day-to-day basis, because she's very used to, okay, for today I've made my checklist and I'm going to go through my day and I'm going to complete all of these projects. And she was like, I had to get comfortable with the fact that I'm not going to finish all of these projects today. And that doesn't mean that I'm not doing what I should be doing. It just means that I have to think about how I'm spreading my workload out to make sure that I'm accomplishing what does need to be accomplished today first, and then completing other projects, a few days later. So it's certainly a lot. And I think that time management is something that I've worked on. But also just being present, right? I have on our team, marketing comms, across all of those functions that we've mentioned, we have 16 people, including myself. And there are times where I just have so much going on that I could shut my door in my office all day long and just work. But that's not how a team properly functions. And so being present for them, being present with the things that I have to do for the day is something that I've really had to work on as well. And then my number one thing, and I'll end the question this way, is I think I mentioned earlier in the conversation when I was asked to take on some marketing functions and didn't have that direct experience in those fields, there was a moment of nervousness. There was a moment of like, well, I want to perform this job really well. Will I be able to do that? And multiple of my mentors, when I expressed that concern to them, said to me, Kate, I had no idea how to do blank when they made me in charge, how to sell a ticket when they put me in charge of ticketing. I had never sold a ticket before in my life. I had no idea how to do other thing before they put me in charge of that. But as you kind of go up in leadership, it's your leadership skills and the way that you approach business and the way that you lead a team that really grow your responsibilities. And then you learn the tactical things and you lean on your teammates who do those things very well to teach you and to educate you. And you're able to help make strategy decisions for them and help guide them in the right direction. So that's the number one thing that I learned in this role that I didn't have before. I was good at PR. I knew PR. That was my bread and butter. And then I had to very quickly become comfortable being uncomfortable and be open to learn new tasks as well.
What I really appreciate about that, and I think the students can take away, is no matter where you're at in your career path, if you're the intern, the entry level, the middle level, if you're the CEO, whatever, it's important to always have a growth mindset and have a mindset where you're trying to constantly learn, and have the humility when you don't know something, and be willing to ask questions. And I think you just talk about your experience in ways that you've had to demonstrate that and grow. And hey, maybe I don't have perfect time management, or maybe I'm not present yet how I always can be, but I'm going to keep growing. I'm going to keep improving. And that makes a good leader, and I think the students can definitely learn from that. The last question I have from our students today, and we did not get to all the student questions, so I want to emphasize what Jake said earlier. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn with Kate. Tell her, hey, I saw you on Before the Snap. They didn't get to my question. Here's my question. And I'm sure she'll, when she gets some spare minutes, managing her time, she'll get back to you. But this last question here, this is from Ashley from the College of New Jersey. And basically, this is good for our students. What would be your top piece of advice on how to get that interview? Because that's what they're chasing right now. They want to make sure they can get in the room and then sell themselves. So what is it with the networking, the resume? How can they get that interview for that internship or entry-level position they're chasing?
There are different philosophies on this, but my personal one is if you didn't write a cover letter, it's going to be really hard for me to give you an interview. Because you can only tell so much from a resume, especially when you're talking about entry-level positions with people who don't have a lot of job experience quite yet. But if I can read your cover letter and you can tell me what your strengths are and why you want this position specifically, not that you're just trying to get your foot in the door in sports, then that tells me a little bit about who you are and what your strengths are. And it's not I don't necessarily care where you went to college. I don't necessarily care what your GPA was. I just want to know, like, what are your strengths? What are your passions? And what value can those strengths bring to this position? So I think cover letters are super important, particularly with entry level positions. And then the other thing that I'd recommend too is sometimes you don't realize if you have a connection somewhere, I think sometimes people can be hesitant to reach out to that connection and say, hey, would you mind flagging my resume for somebody? They feel like it's over asking. But if you have a personal relationship with someone or a professional relationship with someone that works at an organization.
On behalf of myself and the students, I want to thank you again for being a part of the program today here on Before the Snap. Really great insight, really great advice for our students. So thank you again.
No, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to hearing from some folks on LinkedIn as well. So thank you so much.
But everyone hang tight because I know Jake has one more thing we got to do before we end the day and we wrap up. So Jake, it's all yours.
Oh, thank you, Nathan. And again, I want to echo what Nathan said to all of our students. Thank you so much for submitting our questions. It's great. It's kind of a bummer, but it's great when we can't get to all of our questions, showing the interaction that we have with the students in the program today. I actually have two things for you. And the one question I want to ask is because we do have the ability, we don't get this every time, to talk to somebody when an organization is going through a big change. And those of you that don't know, Tennessee Titans announced here about a month or so ago that there's going to be a brand new Nissan Stadium in Tennessee and all the big upgrades coming to it. So for somebody that's involved in so much like we talked about, what is that process like for you? And what's the level of excitement that you see with all the new possibilities that are going to be coming with this brand new stadium?
I honestly, I really don't even know how to explain the absolute transformation that this new stadium will be, not just for our organization, but certainly for our organization, but for the city of Nashville as a whole. This new stadium, we didn't even really get to talk about this, but we talked a lot about Titans and football. But the same staff that works for the Titans football team is also working, those concerts and those events that happen at the stadium. And so the majority of people who come through our gates aren't coming through our gates for a football game. And so that is we take our events at the stadium and our experience at the stadium for football or non-football, just as seriously as we do football games. And the new stadium, biggest differences, obviously it's going to have the experience of a newer, modern NFL facility. It's going to be enclosed. It's going to seat approximately 60-ish thousand people. And it's going to be right in the east parking lots of our current stadium. So if you guys have ever been out to our current stadium, it's nestled along this beautiful river that flows all through Tennessee and through downtown Nashville. And so you have the skyline of downtown Nashville on the west side of the river and the stadium on the east side. And so most of the people who come to events at the stadium park downtown and then walk over this little pedestrian bridge and come over to our stadium. But this river, if you really didn't look for it, you probably wouldn't know that it's there, because unlike a lot of other cities who've done a really good job activating their riverfronts, San Antonio and the Riverwalk. I'm from Texas, so I automatically think of San Antonio. Chicago and its river, even Chattanooga and East Tennessee has a great riverfront activation. This river's just kind of sat there, and it's used for industrial uses, but in terms of how it serves the city, it hasn't really been activated. So we've given the land of our parking lots back to the city. So where the current location, where the current stadium is, once it's demolished, the city is going to build housing. They're going to build retail, restaurants, like this complete new neighborhood around the stadium, smack dab in the middle of one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. So It's going to be so exciting. We are coming to work every day preparing for the new stadium, thinking about ticket sales, thinking about what the game day experience is going to be like. It is truly transformational for everything we do on a day-to-day basis. But we couldn't be more excited for it. It's going to be awesome.
Awesome. I know it's always cool to see these big brand new stadiums be built and all the cool technology that goes into them. So last thing we have today is our rapid fire segment, kind of our fun way to wrap up the program here today. So I got 6 questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready. As you guys can tell, rapid fire and short answers are not my strength, but I'll do my best.
All right. Number 1, LinkedIn. Great way to network or just another social media app?
Great way to network.
Number 2, GPA on a resume. Keep it on, leave it off.
Leave it off.
Number 3, social media accounts, public or private?
Public.
Number 4, jeans at work, all day, every day, only casual Fridays or never?
All day, every day. Our philosophy is dress for your day. So I'm in jeans and in a t-shirt today. My coworker outside is in a 3-piece suit. So we dress for our day.
All right. Number 5, coin toss, heads or tails?
Tails.
And then 6, you score a touchdown, your go-to touchdown celebration.
Oh, it has to be like some sort of salsa. I grew up on the border of Mexico. It's Latin infused for sure. I'll look ridiculous doing it, but that's what it is.
Awesome. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up this installment of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Before the Snap series today, featuring Kate Guerra of the Tennessee Titans. Kate, again, thank you so much for giving time out of your busy schedule. We know the NFL season doesn't stop 1 hour every Friday for our Before the Snap program. So we thank you for giving your time today and being a part of the program.
No, thank you all so much. It was such an honor, and I look forward to hearing from people on LinkedIn.
With that, as always, we want to plug everything here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So as we said at the beginning, like, subscribe, follow, comment, whatever it is with all the Pro Football Hall of Fame social media channels to see what we're doing here in Canton, Ohio as we roll into the holiday season. Got some pretty nice sales on our store too. If you want to get on, get your family, get yourself a little gift here for the holidays. All 32 NFL teams, plus all the Hall of Fame branded materials. Make sure you're following, liking, subscribing, everything with the Tennessee Titans as well. Seeing all the great things the Titans team is doing there in Nashville, both in the stadium and in the community. As always, we say, the game of football just doesn't happen on Sundays, Mondays, or Thursdays. There's so much work that goes into making the game the best that it can be on the field and truly the best the team can do in the community. So Kate, truly from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for everything you do for the game of football and the Nashville community and indirectly impacting us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, specifically being a part of the program today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all.
We'll be back in the new year. January 12th is going to be our next program. So take time off and students enjoy the holidays. Anybody else tuned in, make sure to enjoy some time with your family. But we'll be back in the new year with the vice president of digital media from the New Orleans Saints, Doug Tatum. So for myself, Nathan, Jerry, all of us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, again, Kate, thank you so much. And to all of our students who tuned in, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the new year. Bye, everybody.